Hello everyone, Lord Sara here. We are back with another Necromancer PvP video, and this time we are finally delivering our promise, releasing this full build guide. I have been just constantly testing and making sure that I'm sure of what I'm putting out there, and I was also waiting for Season 1 to cover some of the seasonal changes as well as new Malignant Hearts. Anyhow, I think this build is mostly made, battle tested, and ready to be shipped out. I'm sure there is always room for improvement, and we might add some new things and see how things evolve with upcoming changes, seasons to the game. But I'm happy to say that I really found my style with Necromancer and quite happy with how this build panned out utilizing minions. We actually tested this build against some of the top players in D4. Here in the background you're seeing the fight against Scuba Steve. He was rank 1 rogue in the non-seasonal realm. We ended up stalemating, and he was kind enough to acknowledge this was the most challenging necro fight he has ever encountered and made a post about it in the official Diablo 4 PvP Discord. And by the way, if you haven't already checked out that Discord, there's a lot of info you can learn from those guys in there. Additionally, not only him, but I have encountered many players coming across to this build and claiming that they have never lost a fight to a necro before. Also, some of the viewers, you guys really adopted the build and made it work for yourself as well. These were nice sights to see, because that means I was able to share something meaningful and we were together able to make so-called one of the worst classes in PvP viable and enjoyable. Alrighty, enough with the introduction, let's jump in. If you would like to jump into certain segments of the video, timestamps will be marked as well. In this video we are showcasing actually two different versions of the build. To speak to various styles in addition to Bone Spear and Minions build, I have also created the Shadow version of this build, which we will be covering here as well. Both of those builds links are listed in the description, and I might have to tell you that Shadow build with Minions we came up with might be my actually new favorite. Before we get into build details, let's talk about some targeted stats in PvP. In this build we have 7.2k armor and almost 20k HP. It has been tested and reported that armor over 7.2k also has diminishing returns, and going above that actually is not that effective or efficient. Without any elixir, having 20k HP is super solid, and then once we have barrier on top of this, we feel very tanky enough to fight against some of the burst tier classes. Attack power is not true reflection of our damage. However, I'm able to get my attack power above 40k during the PvP combat, fully buffed, which is also great. That still shows that we have a lot of damage in this build. One thing to note is that crit damage has a soft cap of 200%, so you may be stacking a lot of crit for PvE. However, in PvP you won't benefit from it as much. These summarize some of the target stats we're going for. We want to have 20k HP, 7.2k armor, and as much as attack power as possible while activating different damage buckets. Damage to close, core skill damage, damage while healthy, vulnerability is some crit damage up to 200%. Before I proceed with build details, I would like to state that these builds that I'm gonna be explaining are only possible if you have Mandolin unique ring, since we are heavily relying on proc damage with our minions. I know this might be a deal breaker for some out there, but considering how gear dependent Diablo 4 is, and it's more so in PvP since the better build, better gear always wins, unfortunately Mandolin ring is really must have here. Alrighty, first an OG version of the build, Bone Spear and Minions. Right off the bat, I would like to say that Bone Spear nerfs did not affect this build at all. We never fully relied on Bone Spear for damage. In fact, we relied on it to proc lucky hit chance. It has the highest lucky hit proc chance out of all core skills. Skills we are running for this build as follows: Raise Skeletons, Decrepify, Army of the Dead, Mist, Bone Spear, and Hemorrhage. I think Raise Skeletons is self-explanatory since we are a minion-based build. Decrepify is definitely a must-have in any kind of build, which might change in the season because we'll get there later. We have a heart now that can give us almost perma Decrepify at all times, but it provides us much needed CC pressure, damage reduction, and cooldown reduction. Army of the Dead, our ultimate, is also another must-have for minion builds. It helps us bring back all our minions back instantly, provides corpses, provide huge lucky hit proc chance, and has a great synergy with some of the aspects we're running with passive skills. People often ask, how do you keep your minions alive in PvP? But our goal is actually not to keep them alive constantly. Goal is to bring them back as quickly as possible the moment they die. Then we have our loved Blood Mist. Before the cooldown reduction nerfs, we had only 10 seconds cooldown on this, and with Explosive Mist aspect, we will cut another 2 seconds. You will spend 3 seconds in it, and the downtime will be only 5 seconds. It's not as low right now, but still pretty low. But one thing we have here is that Decryptify significantly reduces the mist's cooldown, and mostly if we keep our rotation clean, we should have mist available 90% of the time. Minions also provide huge advantage here with the cooldown reduction, because even while we can't attack the enemy, if Decryptify is active, all the minion attacks help reduces the cooldown of the mist. And here our core ability Bone Spear. We have almost 80% lucky hit chance on Bone Spear. A lot of people rely on Bone Prison bug to proc lucky hit chance. However, when your Bone Spear is pretty much guaranteeing lucky hit, you really don't need that, especially when combined with attack speed aspect. You can really launch some crazy speed Bone Spears and get a lot of lucky hit procs in a short amount of time. Bone Spear is also our source of vulnerability proc. We are running basic ability as Hemorrhage here. I personally do enjoy having a range based ability because good players, especially rogues, will kite you in distance and avoid your area of denial, or even barbs will do that. So you need to be able to generate essence from distance if you're low, and Hemorrhage is super nice for this because it can be super fast and you can generate tons of blood orbs in the meantime. Speaking of blood orbs, we are generating tons of blood orbs in this build, constantly getting our HP full and proccing Temerity. Yes, we are running Temerity on this build for the barrier. Barrier is the best way to counter poison and dot pressure, so it really helps. Considering we have 20k HP and then we get 6k barrier, we are very tanky, almost reaching 26k HP actually. On this note, you can see in the gameplay footage many times that when we consume corpses, we generate blood orbs through our aspect, and we have other blood orbs laying around from Hemorrhage. We go and mist, pick these up, back to full HP, and also proccing Temerity Shield constantly. I even have super long fights running out of potion, but because we have a lot of healing, we usually can carry on the fight. I'm not necessarily showing a lot of gameplay examples here, but please do check out my channel. I have actually released tons of gameplay action against barbs and rogues. I even recently put out a video becoming Hatred of Chosen solo. I'm also working on releasing more videos, gameplays against druids and sorks and other necromancers as well. So please check those other gameplay options as well as this build video. I think it will be helpful to see the potential of the build. We do have a lot of fortified generation through blood orbs, our glyph. As we generate corpses, we generate more fortified. The more fortified we get damage reduction, more damage as well. So we have a lot of good synergy between skills, the glyphs, and our aspects. Other notable aspects and skill synergies are that we are really focusing on minion attack speed. The more attack speed we get from minions, the quicker we get a lucky hit proc, more CC pressure we put out, more essence generation as well. Speaking of lucky hit and cooldown reduction, we are running wand and focus on this build, both to increase lucky hit chance and cooldown reduction. Overall, with running wand and the focus, we have 55% lucky hit chance. Quickly, let's talk about the Book of the Dead. We are definitely taking Reapers here. The more corpse we generate, the quicker we can summon minions, and more fortified generation as well. Mages, we are taking Essence generation with Cold Mages. Bone Spear is quite expensive, so we want to be able to generate Essence very quickly. Mages with the attack speed, they generate endless Essence, and we can constantly fire off Bone Spears without having any sustained issues. Like I mentioned, with the 80% lucky hit chance, the more Bone Spears we throw, the more guaranteed lucky hit procs and bursts we get. We are also sacrificing the Golem for extra HP here. Let's talk about the Paragon Board. I will not go into details here, but you can see the detailed Paragon Board in the D4 planner, link in description again. To quickly go over some of the glyph and legendary choices, we start with Blood Drinker. Like I mentioned, we have so many ways to generate blood orbs. The more blood orbs we generate, more 45 we get, and that gives us more damage and damage reduction as well. We're definitely taking the Flesh Eater legendary node. We are constantly consuming corpses, and proccing extra 40% damage is huge. Another must-have glyph in my opinion is the Territorial. Definitely non-negotiable. Most enemies fight from close, and we do get another 10% damage reduction and up to 100% increased damage to close enemies from this glyph. We are also running Imbider, another good damage booster. Since we are generating barrier constantly, we can utilize this glyph quite well as well. We are also taking the Scent of Death legendary, definitely must have. This gives us another damage reduction since we constantly generate corpses. Another glyph we're taking is Exploiter to boost our vulnerability damage. There are some rumors that vulnerability damage is also capped in PvP. However, there hasn't been any consistent finding on this. In the meantime, we will continue to run this glyph. Last, we're taking Control Glyph. CC is not that quite reliable, and I never recommend anyone to purposely build towards CC in PvP, since top-end players, high-end players will almost always have perma unstoppable. But like I mentioned before, we have so much passive CC going out in this build almost all the time. We can't even find a way to CC those druids and barbs and rogues. So when we get that CC out through our minions, this glyph gives us that extra huge damage boost to execute the enemy in a short amount of time. You will see good examples of this in my gameplay videos, where even high-end players, we will get opportunities to CC them just because how much CC we have in this build. Alright, let's talk about the version 2 of this build, Shadow Damage and Minions. This was asked and requested, and to create alternative ways of playing this build, I also developed a Shadow build utilizing minions. Utilizing Dot Pressure, Corpse Explosion, Shadow Mages, and Blight. You can also find build details in the description below. Main difference here, we're actually running Blight instead of Bone Spear, which is the second highest core skill with lucky hit chance, and also helps us proc Shadow Blight passive quicker. Since we will be missing the vulnerability we get from Bone Spear and quicker lucky hit chance, we will be using Bone Prison on this build to have an access to those quick lucky hit procs and vulnerability as well. Shadow build has a lot of damage, and it's actually quite fun to play, so it's your choice if you would like to utilize Bone Spear or Shadow Damage. It's a matter of style and preference really. Another main change with the aspects is that we are also running Darkness aspect with Mist and Shadow Blight aspect as well to get those huge damage numbers. Until now, what stopped me from doing a Shadow Blight build in PvP was that you will not be able to reliably proc Shadow Blight when you come across single enemy, and you will really need to rely on mob density. If enemy will not sit in your dots, which most good ones will not, you will struggle to get your shadow stacks going. However, with minions, that is not the case. I think compared to most shadow based builds out there, utilizing minions here again is the key. That made shadow damage stacking a lot easier and faster. We do get more consistent damage pressure from shadow damage, and we get all the benefits and utility from minions still. Especially because we're running shadow mages, we actually stack Shadow Blight super quickly even when we're fighting a single enemy, and this even works in boss fights too in PvE. With Paragon Board, the main change we have is having Wither Board instead of Bone Graft Board. With Wither Board, we are slotting Darkness Glyph to boost our shadow damage, since we are also running shadow and minion based build. This is also reduces the damage of our enemies, since our minions will be doing rapid shadow damage to our opponents. Again, you can find all those details in the build link in the description below. Additionally, I would like to list some of the Malignant Hearts I'm planning to incorporate in this season. Rest assured, this build should only feel better in the seasonal realm. Disclaimer, I have not tested these yet in PvP. However, I'm pretty certain of that these hearts will be the way for us in Season 1. And I actually can't wait, because I think they will make our build so much more stronger. Let's start with the defensive one I'm planning on using. Prudent Heart. you become immune for 2-4 seconds after you lose more than 21% of your HP in a single hit. This combined with our reduced miss cooldown can ensure that we actually become quite unkillable. Main way we die is we quickly get bursted down, and this might be really helpful for us to counter some of the burstier opponents. The second one I definitely plan on using is the Decrepify aura. When at least 5 enemies are near you, gain an aura that automatically curses enemies with Decrepify for 5 to 15 seconds. Initially you might think that, oh, I need 5 enemies to proc this. However, that is not the case. Endgame version of this can go down to 0. Yes, 0, which means you can have Decrepify all the time. That also means our minions constantly CC or reduce the cooldown the moment enemy approaches us. And this also gives us opportunity to possibly run the other curse skill in the tree to utilize. But we'll talk about that more later. I think this heart will definitely be a must for us. Third one I plan to use is the Sacrilegious. Walking near a corpse automatically activates an equipped corpse skill every second. This means that the moment there's a corpse laying around and we have a missing minion, it will automatically spawn back our minions. Like I mentioned, our goal is not to keep them alive in PvP, but to respawn them as quickly as possible. And what could be better for us than this heart right here? We can immediately bring all our minions back the moment they die automatically, as long as we have corpses laying around. Some honorary mentions and other hearts I plan to test is the Greed Feast, where each minion drains 1 essence but deals up to 75% damage. This one might have a lot of potential and might even let us drop Mandolin. Another one I would like to test is the Revenge Heart, which lets you absorb 20% of the incoming damage, and when you use Mist, it explodes 250% for more damage. This can be kind of a nice turn and burn type of ability. I think this was everything I wanted to cover with this video. Before I conclude my video, there is an issue I would like to bring awareness on. Currently there's a bug in the seasonal realm. It's making PvP quite unplayable right now, and it will only get worse as this bug gets abused by players. We made a forum post about this, so please go comment and upvote to bring awareness to this bug so it's fixed as soon as possible and we can go back to PvPing healthily. The link to this forum post will be in the description below. I hope this guide was helpful. I might have missed some details, but wanted to keep it as short, direct, and efficient as possible. You will see all the details that I might have missed in the description below with the build guide link. Like always, please comment your feedback and questions below so we can discuss and continue to brainstorm together. I will also be streaming regularly on Twitch again, so feel free to come by the streams if you have any questions or ideas, or simply just like to hang out as we level through the new season and get ready to PvP actively again. I'm also leaving my Discord server info in the description. I have a small community of gamers. We do have a very friendly guild focusing on PvP and PvE. Feel free to join as well if you're looking for fellow like-minded gamers to play with. Lord Sora here. I hope this was helpful and informative. See you on the next one. Cheers.